Welcome. This is the Facebook presentation of the Grizzly Creek Community Meeting. And I'm John Martin, Garfield County Commissioner. And I want every one of you guys out there listening or watching, stand up. We need to give a great applause and appreciation to the Type 1 teams that have helped our community in an outstanding manner. They put life and limb at odds. They have fought fire 24 hours a day. They have put up with us, and thank goodness they are here. So again, thank them. If you see them, honk at them, wave at them, hug them if you can. Be careful, they're dirty. But anyway, thank you very much for that. And the other one is that I'd like to thank also CDOT, the Sheriff's Office, both Eagle and Garfield County, because we got some folks home. Thank goodness, we got some evacuees home. We got them down there in no name. I got many calls. How do I get home? We wore out Mike's telephone number. Everybody remembers Mike's telephone number. If not, I'm going to give it out here later on. No, he says no, don't give it out. He has had too many phone calls. Again, I hope that you found your home safe, that they weren't vandalized, they weren't burned. Nobody really ransacked your place. I hope that your yards were cleaned up. I saw the chippers working. I saw the patrols going. I saw all the equipment moving. So thank you again for being patient. Now, you're going to receive some alerts in the future on GARCO 911. That's GARCO 911 in the future, because we're not out of the woods yet, folks. We're going to have some problems with rockfall. We may have storms that come across. We have debris flow, possibility of floods. We're going to be working on recovery now. That's what happens after a fire. We got to recover. We got to prepare for it. So you need to make sure that you stay alert. Don't rest on your laurels and put your feet up and watch football. Stay alert, listen to the news, and keep your phone on so that you can get that 911 call to evacuate. However, in the near future, within the week or so, those that were evacuated will also be contacted by, again, the communications department, the emergency response folks, and to really prepare you for what is going to happen. Because it may be clear into fall before we're finished, and maybe even not then. It could be that spring runoff will have a problem. Okay, we have a changing of the guard. We're losing one type team because they've been here for 14 days. They're being shipped out. They're bugging out right now. And Alaska, Type 1 team is here now. Get to know them. Get to see the new logo. And you'll see some of their faces here tonight. Hopefully they'll be just as responsive as the other team has been, the Great Plains. So we will go ahead and work with them and extend each courtesy that you possibly can to Type 1 Alaska team. And now, because you've been looking at me, and it's time for a beautiful face, I'm going to introduce the next speaker, Sam the man, right here. Sam, get up here. Show him what a good-looking face is.
You're a hard act to follow, John. Thank you there, Commissioner John Martin. My name is Sam Harrell. I'm an information officer with the Alaska Incident Management Team. I'm here from my home in Fairbanks, Alaska. We've also want to thank the county for hosting the community meeting. This is really a big help for us to be able to get our message out to an awful lot of people, and a lot of people are really concerned about what's going on and have been very, very interested. This meeting is also being simulcast and translated into Spanish on a sister Facebook page. It's been happening at all the other community meetings, so I'm sure that you'll be able to find that. It's also being recorded and will be available on the Grizzly Creek Fire Facebook page. If you know somebody who's interested and they've missed it, you can direct them back here, and they'll be able to find what was said and the comments and questions and answers that we'll have here. All right, it's an organization, it's a federal organization. There's going to be a few rules. It's here on Facebook. Use the comment section for your questions. I've got some moderators here backing me up and working, and they're capturing those questions. And at the end, after the presentations, we'll present those questions to each subject matter expert who will be able to answer those questions. If you stump us tonight, don't worry. We'll find the answer out for you. We will answer it, and we'll get back to you. Let's see. The questions will be at the end. we're going to do all of our presentations first. After me will be the Alaska Incident Management Team Deputy Incident Commander Tom Kurth. He'll be followed by our Operations Chief John Glover. We have a fire behavior analyst with us tonight, Chris Moore. Don Poole with the Colorado Department of Transportation. Don's right here in Glenwood Springs, senior foreman, Glenwood Springs I-70 corridor. That Glenwood Canyon is his project. What a beautiful stretch of highway he's got there. Larry Sandoval with the BLM field office, Colorado River Valley. He'll be here. Lisa Steffler, she's the White River National Forest Deputy Forest Supervisor. She'll be here also, making her presentation, and we'll be able to answer questions for you also. So enough of me, let's get right to it. And here's Tom Kurth, our Deputy Incident Commander.
All right. Thank you, Sam. And I'm going to start with a public service announcement while I take off my mask here, because we're wearing these things all day long, and we're taking them on, we're taking them off. And it actually is one of the sources of exposure that we can have related to COVID-19. So we got to be very careful about that. But we do need to breathe some while we're talking here. So again, I'm Tom Kurth, Deputy Incident Commander with the Alaska team, and we'll talk a little bit how we got here. But John, our commissioner there, thank you for that warm greeting. That was nice of you. And one of the things that we try to do is, the public who we're serving is often very gracious, wants to make donations and that sort of thing. And really, we take care of our firefighters the best we can. But, they're toiling long hours in solitude and, in remote areas. And so if you can show them appreciation in some form, that might be a sign or a card or a message or something like that, they certainly thrive on that sort of activity there. So thanks again for your warm opening there. Again, we're the Alaska Interagency Incident Management Team. We carry about 80 individuals with us. Those are subject matter expertise in things like operations, plans, logistics, finance, aviation, safety, communications, and those folks have the most experience to take on the most complicated fires. It's always a privilege to me to gather those folks up and work with them. I'm somewhat of the older generation, and we got a new generation coming in behind us, and they're certainly an experienced and innovative bunch here. So they're adapting to this new environment, which is rather virtual, so that's certainly new to us. But we'll hear from some of those folks there, and you'll get an idea of their qualifications and experience. Now, the Great Basin team was here before us. They did a lot of heavy lifting on this whole fire here. They're the ones that were first in as a type 1 team and have the most complicated problems that they are presented with. And they did certainly an outstanding job. And so we're coming in to relieve them. They get a rest and they'll be available to go out on another assignment, and we'll take over and pick up where they left off. And our operations chief, John Glover, will explain about where we're headed and what that is. We've got a couple of places that are uncontained line, difficult places to access. And so kind of unraveling this puzzle is what our operations people will be doing, along with examining some of the rehabilitation that will take place in fire lines that are already established here. Okay, and you might ask, why the Alaska team? Well, we come from big time fire country. We have lots of fire. We have fire prone ecosystems, and then we have a limited amount of firefighters. So we see each other on a regular basis. We work together as a team. We get a lot of experience, and then we go on a national rotation. And when our number's up, down we come to assist here. So there again, we are public servants, and certainly beholding to you, the public, to take our direction from you. Our primary direction comes from the landowners that are here. That's the U.S. Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, Colorado State, Garfield and Eagle counties, and then a myriad of cooperators that we have and work with. Those are your fire departments, law enforcement, utilities, and the folks that are restringing power lines and reopening roads and getting people back into their homes. And then we'll continue to take direction from the U.S. Forest Service. They're the primary landowners here. And so they're the managers that tell us we need this, and this done. And Lisa Stouffer with the Forest Service will be up eventually here to kind of tell you how that works. But we get a decision document that says we want this accomplished, and that is our decision document that we follow along. And then we take that direction and update that on a regular basis when we think, when we get a look at things and we say, this can be done, this is realistic, and this is not here. Okay, so I think with that, we'll certainly be available for questions here. But we appreciate this invitation into this rather remarkable country here. Certainly an engineering marvel where we're coming from the other side through here to Glenwood Springs. And this highway that's been built through this gorge, railroads in there, and then certainly some geological phenomena that's quite stunning here. So it's quite a setting for us, and again, we appreciate the invitation down here. Okay.
All right, thank you, Tom. Operations Chief, John Glover.
All right, I'm apparently the shorter one of the bunch here, so I'm going to adjust this real quick. But good evening, everyone. Just like to say thank you very much for hosting us in your beautiful community. It's a pleasure to be here, and hopefully we'll be able to meet your needs. I'm Operations Section Chief Trainee John Glover, and I'll be giving you an update on the current fire situation that we have here, and I'll try and answer your questions at the end of the meeting. Current situation, fire is about 32,302 acres. We're showing about 61% containment. We have currently 13 crews, 5 helicopters, 37 engines, 13 water tenders, 10 dozers, and a few skidders out here, and we're totaled out at about 724 personnel. So quite a big organization that we have here, and I'll tell you where they've all been put to work and what their accomplishments have been so far. So if we can cue to the map for there. Okay, so we have the fire split up into 3 branches similar to the other team, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the resource activities that are going on. Over in branch 1, which is on the west side of the fire here, we have Division November, IA, and structure assets in there. The structure protection folks, you've seen them out and around in tighter to the fire area, and they've been where it's applicable and appropriate, they've been disassembling some of the structure protection that was set up in and around the homes, and they've been assessing any other areas of concern that we may have with the Division November area. Our initial attack folks have been familiarizing themselves with the geography here, with the road systems, coordinating with the county and local departments, and supporting in any initial attack operations that have been dispatched or calls that have been made. We also, it obviously doesn't show on the map, but we are running a night shift out here, which is running patrols and supporting initial attack as well in and around the incident. So down in Division Alpha, where it comes off of I-70 and works its way up to the south end, or down to the south end of the fire, we've had a lot of success in this area holding this and patrolling it. Crews are working their way down the edge, and as you guys know, the terrain's pretty rowdy here. Beautiful, but arduous to say the least. So it's slow progression, but they are gaining containment, working their way down to the I-70 corridor. Up across the top end of what's branch 2 here, it's been a bit challenging. There's a fair amount of heat in here. And I just want to inform you guys out there in the communities that you're going to continue to see red along this area for a while. It's It doesn't mean that there's a high risk probability of great movement to the south. It means that we're having a hard time getting in there and extinguishing the heat along that containment line. The fuel and terrain is just making it difficult, and it's holding a lot of heat. So definitely going to see some red there. But as long as as we continue to have this favorable weather pattern, and we don't have a deep freeze and a lot of freeze kill, then we should be sitting pretty good up here. And I don't foresee a lot of movement to the south. In addition, we have a lot of dozer lines that are out here on the benches that flattens out with a lot of opportunities to catch it to reduce spread. As we move past drop point 80 here, a lot of good work has been put in. You can see the black edge. Folks are continuing to patrol this and just double check it. The other day, I know 2 days ago, you guys saw a fair amount of activity in this bowl here. They were completing unmanned aerial operations where we basically drones that were doing some ignition operations to clean out this pocket so we didn't have a run uphill that was not under our control. So that was very successful. All of the lines have been holding now for about a day and a half, and we're looking to add some containment here in the next day or two along the east side. Lot of ground. I mean, obviously we got a small map here and an easy image to follow, but as you well know, it's big country out here. So, and these lines are, I promise you, not as straight as they look if you're out walking them. Down here in Bear Ranch, a lot of success, continuing to patrol and mop up, gain depth on our control line there. And this containment is maintaining. As we move up into Branch 3, on the northeast side, everything going up towards Coffee Pot is holding well. They've actually initiated suppression repair in that area in the last day. So they're starting to rehab the lines that are the dozer lines and hand lines and such that are in this area, water barring those and so on and so forth. Up on top, good containment. That's all holding, and they've been pushing and gaining ground as they come around to the north and to the west. This is new in the last couple of days here. This new containment as they're progressing to the west. Again, big country up on top. A lot of work to support that, but they're doing well. As you guys know, or maybe you don't, but this cliffs off pretty hard right in this area. That's another area that we're going to continue to see red on the map showing uncontained. Again, that doesn't mean that we think that there's a high potential for rapid spread and growth through there. It just means that it's not something that we can put our name on and say it's not going to move anymore. A lot of this area, it cliffs out and it's holding well in the drainage, but that is dependent on weather and conditions to help it maintain there. It's also very, very arduous country, but as you get up on the other side of the slope, it's a little bit more catchable for firefighters and operational personnel. Benches out, there's a lot of open meadows. There are some stringers and stuff like that in there of conifer, but it's a lot easier to catch it. So risk versus reward and keeping firefighter safety in mind. Our options for any movement to the north and west of this section is catching it up on this ridge here. Where you see H1 and H2 on the map, those are cabin sites, and those have been they've got structures up there. Those have been treated and protected, and structure protection in place. And this area right here keeps inching its way up there, but it hasn't been a rapid spread or rapid movement. We have personnel up in this area that are monitoring that and keeping eyes on that spread and the potential for any movement to the west here. Coming into November, I know this is something that your community especially is concerned about, so I'll try and be as detailed as I can and definitely willing to answer as many questions as possible. But we'll kind of work our way inside out. So As you go up no name drainage here, the previous team and the crews personnel had a lot of success holding this piece up here, but as you get further to the north, it gets rowdier and rowdier. The fire is holding in the drainage from everywhere down, everywhere you see from the black edge down, and they got a hose lay, they plumbed that, and it's holding well in there. But as you get up, it starts to get what we call underslung line. And so we have like a mid-slope fire's edge, which is, it's a very big hazard for firefighters. You get a lot of rolling material. You can have stuff ignite fire below you and run up slope. It's very hazardous, very, very challenging. And, this is a similar type of hazard that they dealt with 5 miles down the road in 96 with Storm King Mountain. So this is something we're really aware of. And we're really cognizant of, and we're trying to assess this and make the best decisions we can for trying to pick up and secure this edge, knowing that direct attack on wildland fires, if it can be accomplished, is by far the best route. With that being said, we have secondary lines out here on this ridge top going all the way out to Windy Point. You guys are probably familiar with that with the other team. And they put this check line in here. It was before we had containment that went up and exceeded it. We're looking at putting a little bit more line in here in this area as the fire's edge has progressed and is holding in the drainage. So we reduce any potential by taking out as much opportunity as possible. So we're putting a line in this piece here, and we're improving our secondary lines as they go out to the northwest. These lines tie into the contingency lines from Quebec, and the fuel transition is significantly different up on top, where we have pockets of 100 or 200 acres of con, but a lot of open meadows and a lot of really good opportunities to catch the fire if it were to push out. And our main objective, if we get a push, is to try and steer this north out here to this favorable country to fight the fire on our terms and have a higher probability of success in catching it. Apparently the fire went away. Okay, we still have a fire. Okay, all right. So in this area, I guess I want you guys to know that we have some of the best firefighters possible, smoke jumpers and hotshots that are scouting in this area and looking for the most feasible options that create the highest probability of success with the lowest amount of risk to firefighters on the ground and firefighters in the air. And we're getting positive feedback in here. And in the next day or so, we're going to look to enact the either this plan or continue to improve this. But we're having talks with the agency administrators in the next couple of days, and we're going to finalize our plans on how we're going to assess this. But I just want to reassure the community that we're looking at every single option possible, taking into consideration that, the last week or so, we've had a little bit moderated weather conditions that have provided us additional opportunities that the team before us just wasn't in the position to have, because they were chasing an edge all the way around. And now that we're centralized into 1, 2, and 3 areas, it provides a little bit more opportunity for us. So if you're in Glenwood Springs here, you probably saw a little bit of activity in here, and I just want to assure you guys that was Grizzly Creek. It was pushing out of there pretty well today, mainly right in that area. I flew it twice today, so I had good eyes on it. There's a couple of stringers of conifers in there that had enough sun on it, a little bit of upslope winds, and they were cleaning themselves up and just making it all black in there. They were not pushing over our lines. They were not pushing over the existing edge. It was just cleaning up interior. So we did have some helicopter operations on this northwest side as well, trying to keep that in check while these personnel are out here scouting direct line opportunities. So I hope that gives you guys a broad overview of what's going on, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end if you guys have any.
All right, thank you, John. Next up, we have Chris Moore, our fire behavior analyst. He'll also give us an update on the weather conditions that we're going to be facing here in the future? Okay, Chris. You might explain what a fire behavior analyst is too.
Okay.
Thank you.
So like Sam said, I am a fire behavior analyst, and my whole job on the fire is to work with the meteorologist and discuss and analyze the three things that make a fire burn, which are fuels, weather, and topography. So we do have an incident meteorologist on the fire, but he is busy briefing the night shift people who are going to go out in the fire tonight. So I'm going to cover weather, and just remember, I'm not the meteorologist, so I'll do the best I can. So as we have this, we call this the matrix, and it kind of lays out what's going to happen over the next week. And you can notice today was pretty much the hottest day of the week. And then as we move into the weekend, we start getting cooler as we move towards the beginning of next week. The other thing to notice is that starting tomorrow and definitely into Saturday, there's an increased chance of thunderstorms and an increased chance of rain. So we're watching that rain. The meteorologist is watching radar the whole time, and we're just paying attention to that, and that's something that he'll be monitoring through the weekend. And then what's going to happen early next week, there's going to be two fronts moving through. So Sunday and Monday, you can notice the temperatures are dropping off. But what happens when a front moves through is that the temperatures cool off, but also the winds increase. So as of right now, they're not sure if those stronger winds are going to come with rain or not. Sometimes they're dry cold fronts, sometimes they're wet cold fronts. So every time a model comes in, they're analyzing to see if there's a higher chance of rain or not. But those are things to pay attention to as we move into the future. Like I said, there are three things that make a fire burn. It's the fuels, the weather, and the topography. And all those three things need to work together to make a fire burn. So just keep that in mind as we start talking about areas on the map. You can switch to the map now. So when this fire started, the fire started down in the bottom of the canyon. It has been hot and dry and windy in this part of the state. It sounds like all summer. And there is plenty of fuel on the side of these hills to burn. So when the fire started, we had the perfect scenario for a fire to burn very rapidly like it did the first couple of days. We had hot, dry weather for an extended period of time. So all those fuels start to dry out, all the moisture starts to go away, and they're more available to burn. We have steep slopes. Fires burn much better going upslope than going down. And we had the weather conditions, hot, dry, and windy, to help move that fire. So where we are now is that we have a lot of black around the fire, but we still have variable conditions that are going around. So there's still potential for fire to move when those three things come into alignment. And those are what we watch for as we move into operations. And I try to give my point of view to operations when they come up with a plan on what I think from the fire standpoint. So one thing to note is that the interior of this fire will be putting up smoke for the rest of the summer. The fire hopefully will not be spreading, but there's still going to be interior pockets of fuel, like Glover mentioned before, in Grizzly Creek, that will be burning out for the rest of the summer until it snows. So even after firefighters leave, there's still going to be smoke in the interior of the fire, and that's just the way it is, because fuels are going to continue to burn out. So what happened to the, oh, there we go. So first area is down here. Glover mentioned that it's a really hard area. The fire came up the slope, and it hit this flat spot and kind of lost its oomph, right? It needs those three things: the fuels, the weather, topography. Up here, it lost the topography. And then at the top of that plateau, it moved from mixed conifer and more flammable fuels to aspen. Aspen does not burn as well as mixed conifer or conifers in general, right? They have a lot of water. So when it hit this area up here, we refer to it as a dirty burn. It's not a nice, clean, black edge. It's kind of messy. There's lots of heat scattered around, and it requires a lot of work for people to put that out. That's why that red line is going to be there. People are going to be in there putting out every single log that's still smoking while they're there before that area is black. Also up here is that there's a lot of cows that I noticed when I was driving around up there. So they're grazing the grass. Those grass tend to be more flammable than the aspen logs. Without the grass there, the threat of movement down here is much, much less. Glover talked about Bear Ranch. They burned that out. All those fuels have consumed, but there are firefighters still there on the line, making sure all the fuel next to the line is put out so we don't have any spots that cross the line. And then up here in No Name and Grizzly, that's the interesting part of this last piece of the puzzle on how to put that out. Glover talked about mid-slope line up here in No Name. Like I said, you need the fuels, weather, topography. So if you have a hot ember that rolls out to the bottom of the creek, you now have flammable fuel with a slope and there's an alignment and the fire can race back up to the top. So that's not the best situation and we're trying to assess that as we can. The other issue is if the fire throws a spot across the creek, there is areas of mixed conifer that go from the bottom of the creek all the way to the top. And once again, we have that slope added with that burnable fuel. So if a spot crosses the creek, which it hasn't yet, there is a chance for the fire to run up the hill. But like down here on the south side, when it runs up the hill, it's losing that slope factor. So it doesn't have those three things that help a fire burn. The other thing that happens up here on the ridge is that it goes from conifer to aspen. Like down here, that aspen doesn't burn as well as the conifer. So if things started to get interesting and fires running up there, we have what we call a fuel type change. It goes from that conifer to aspen, which is more favorable for us to go in there and try and put it out. So we're trying to assess what's happening up here in that area and coming up with the best plan to put firefighters in there safely and where they're going to have the highest success. Yeah, I think I've covered all the areas of the fire. Initial attack is another thing that we're responsible for. So if there is a new start somewhere in the area, we're going to send people there. We have those three things that we're assessing: the fuels, the weather, and the topography. So if there's that alignment and there's a new start that happens there and we have steep slope, heavy fuels, and wind, then we have a high chance for a rapid growth of fires. So we're going to pay attention to that.
Real quick, Chris, how would a deep freeze affect the fire?
That's a good question.
Can you repeat it, please?
Yes. How would a deep freeze affect the fire? So that's one of the things we are especially concerned with up here above 10,000 feet. We have green fuels, and as the temperatures start to freeze, those green fuels go from being live to pretty much dead, and they're more readily burnable. So these meadows up here around H1 and H2 currently are not carrying fire, but as we progress into late summer and early fall, they're going to continue to burn, and temperatures up here will start going down below freezing, and they'll start to burn and cure out and be more available to burn. So we're paying attention to that. I think we're going to try and put a weather station up here so we can monitor those trends and know that if things start to get down below freezing on a regular basis overnight, that these fuels are going to become more available to burn, and we're paying attention to that. But once again, the conifers, those are the hard part. That grassy area, even if it starts to burn, it's much easier for firefighters to go in there and put out grass than it is that mixed conifer, those islands that are scattered around there on that plateau. Anything else? And I'll answer more questions at the end. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chris. Don Poole with Colorado Department of Transportation.
Thank you, Sam. Don Poole, as you said, Senior Supervisor for Colorado Department of Transportation with I-70 Corridor, Glenwood Canyon. I'm based here in Glenwood Springs. We have several issues that we're watching right now. One being the fire in the corridor with the loss of vegetation, that we possibly could have rockfall at any time. Also, we are watching very closely the precipitation, when we're going to get that, and at what amounts of precipitation we'll get. We're working very closely with Team Alaska's meteorologist, constantly giving us updates. We also have 2 meteorologists that work for CDOT that we're working with, and trying to make sure that first and foremost, we protect the traveling public through Glenwood Canyon. We've set priority and criteria for trigger points for road closures. We're going to try to maintain I-70 open, but we know when we receive precipitation, we're gonna have to close the road at some point. We get alerts, we're watching the watches, warnings and alerts. When we get a watch, our folks go on standby at our closure points, which are the 116 and the 133 mile markers, known as Main Glenwood Springs Interchange and Dot Zero Interchange. When we approach that alert, we are going on a full closure with the anticipation that will give us enough time to clear all traffic from Glenwood Canyon. CSP is going to help us, and they are going to follow the last vehicle through on each side to make sure that nobody stops in the corridor within those mile markers. And we have a chance to have everything cleared out before something actually impacts the roadway. So with that said, we're more than likely going to be closing I-70 at some point in the future. Also, we are going to remain with our closures of our rest areas through Glenwood Canyon and the bike path. With discussions with Garfield County Emergency Management Team, we do not want to allow people to access the rest areas so they cannot get onto the bike path, be away from their vehicles, causing more of a search and rescue event after we do have a storm event that does produce any flash flooding or debris flows. Like I said, we are monitoring this very closely. Yesterday evening, we had a watch. We had our folks on the roadway, ready to close it at moment's notice when Team Alaska's meteorologist told us if that was necessary. So I'll take more questions at the end, but that's where we're at right now. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Don. Next up, we have White River National Forest Deputy Forest Supervisor, Lisa Steffler.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, John, I got you beat here on the height thing. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Just a couple things. We don't have a lot of new stuff to share, but a couple of reflections and updates for you from the forest. First, the Alaska team, thank you for being here. I don't see Tom in the bright lights out there, but he described it really well. We've established an awesome relationship with this new team, the BLM, the state and the counties and the Forest Service. And we've shared our intent, we've shared the community's needs, we've shared this landscape and what our priorities are, and they are taking care of those very well. Very happy with the work they're doing and the conversations that we're having about that. So thank you. I just want to touch on something. I had kind of some reflections on, this is probably our at least 5th or 6th or more virtual meeting. So it's kind of a brave new world for us in the Facebook Live world. And I'll tell you, it's been really hard to speak to an empty room and not have all of you here. On the other hand, it's been terrific because so many people can attend and hear what the team has to say and get these updates. So I think about the future, and boy, it's something that we'll consider doing in the future, but we sure do look forward also to having you all in the room so we can engage with you. But it's great for you all to be able to submit your questions and your comments and all of your praise for the firefighters. We're passing those along at every chance, so thank you for that. It's been an odd fire to work in this environment and try to keep everyone safe, not only on the fire line, but from any infection. And we have these great guests from Alaska, a place that they don't have very much COVID, and we wanna send them home healthy. So thanks for all you do there. I wanna mention a couple of things that are up with our information folks on our Facebook page, some really important things. Because people, for the most part, haven't been able to get in and see the effects of the fire, we have some really cool video up there. There's one that our Deputy Ranger Marsha Gillis narrated where we flew a drone up to Hanging Lake. If you haven't looked at it, it's really terrific. I think you'll be really pleased with what you see there. We also did another drive-through video that's narrated that you can see that's up on that site. And I also want to share one other thing. People have asked, how can we help? What can we do? And all of you in this community know how generous these communities can be, both with volunteers and donations and so forth. As Tom said, we're really fortunate. Our firefighters are fed every day. They have a place to sleep. They have transportation. They have what they need. Our congressionally chartered organization, the National Forest Foundation, announced this week that they are setting up a public fund, the White River National Forest Restoration Fund, specifically to support critical needs on the White River and around the Grizzly Creek fire. So I encourage you to go and take a look at that. You can find a link on our Facebook page for this fire, but also you can go to nationalforest.org/Grizzly Creek and find out more about that fund. Those donated funds will be available to the White River National Forest and our partners and communities as we sort through some of the needs that we're going to have into this fall and the years to come. So that's a great place for the community to work together to address what we know will be needs in the watershed, in those recreation sites, on trails, on the highway, and all kinds of things that we may not even realize we have to overcome yet. The other thing, as we've mentioned before, you could continue to do to help is, remember we are in stage 2 fire restrictions, have a ban on open fires in the state of Colorado. So important that you observe those. I know we have a long weekend coming up in a little more than a week and hunting season, but we have had a couple of initial attacks, new fires, and they're still standing up and spreading quickly. So we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. So please remember that. And also, please be patient with our closures. We mentioned the closures of the rest areas, which also double as some recreation access sites, and we realize that. We're doing everything we can to assess those every day for firefighter safety as well as the public safety, and we'll get to those and we'll get those open as we can. And the area closure up on the Coffee Pot Road and south of the interstate, please allow those firefighters to do their work and to keep you and them safe. So those are some of the things that you can do to help. We look forward to any questions. I think that's the end of our presentations, right? So we'll stand by for questions.
Great. And
Thanks, everyone.
thanks, Lisa. And actually, we'll start with you.
Okay.
We'll get you right started. And I know you just mentioned this, but let's just make sure everybody's clear. What can be done to help restore our beautiful canyon and Grizzly no-name trails?
Well, to be quite honest, we haven't been on those trails yet, so we're not 100% sure. We expect there'll be a lot to be done both to restore the trails themselves as well as make them safe for the public. I mean, we've got thousands and thousands of burned trees now along these trails, and we want to make sure people are safe. So as soon as it is safe to get in there, we'll start assessing. And I assume that'll be one of those things. I presume that'll be one of those things that we'll work on together through this fund.
Excellent.
Is there more?
Will resources remain here until this quote-unquote problem child is taken care of? And thank you for being here to the firefighters from the person who asked that question.
Yeah, I'm really glad, that the team and the fire behavior and operations people brought up just what's still left to do on this fire. And it's easy to forget. It's still 30,000 acres of fire with a lot of uncontrolled lines. So we will continue to have people assigned to this fire in some capacity until we can call it out. Now, some days that may be after the snow falls. We may do that with a helicopter. We may do that remotely. We may have people hiking and driving around the fire. I don't know what that future is going to look like. But for now, this team is going to stay here, continue to control the active fire edge, and do the restoration work that we need to make it safe for people to go back into this country. But yes, we will not leave this fire until we can call it safe and controlled.
Excellent, thank you. And what about rafting? That's a topic.
Yeah, that's a topic. Rafting is one of those things that is accessed largely from Interstate 70 and these rest areas. And until we can make those safe, we just can't let people stop along the interstate and use those highway pullouts and rest areas. I know that the BLM is working on restoring access to some of their sites upriver from Dotsero, and I'll let them make some comments about that in the coming days. And then, of course, downriver from Glenwood Springs or upriver on the Roaring Fork are places that people can still access the river. But the rest of it, just not safe for people to be in. And remember, we also have fire crews that are using some of those rest areas as their spike camps, and we need to let them do their work.
Excellent. Can I stay with you for one more?
Okay.
Do we know how the fire started?
We do not have a determined cause for the fire, still under investigation. We will release that as soon as we have it.
Excellent. And then another one from the
Oh,
crowd.
you just said that was the last one.
Oh, okay, two more. Have there been any surveys done on the local cave systems, structural integrity?
Not yet. We hope that to be part of the burned area assessment we do in several weeks from now.
Okay, great, thanks. Let's switch it up to ops.
Okay.
John Glover. Mr. Glover, can we get a brief, just talk about the interior of the fire? Are there any operations interior, and how long will the interior burn?
Okay, interior operations on the fire, if we can go to the map real quick. All right, we there? Okay, thank you. Okay, so like I said, most predominant one that was just completed was this ignition operation to clean up the bowl here in Division X-ray, that area of unburned fuels. That's one of the types of things that we do in the interior area. As you guys well know, the I-70 corridor is, they're resetting power poles, CDOT's working in there. We have a branch director that's dedicated solely to working with the folks rebuilding the infrastructure interior along the I-70 corridor. So we're obviously in coordination with those folks. Interior along the highway corridor, we've been getting a lot of reports, people calling dispatch or calling the fire and informing us of flare-ups. And we take all of those, excuse me, extremely seriously. So a lot of the times they're most visible at night. Our night shift has been addressing those. We had 3 calls just last night within the I-70 corridor, and those folks are going out there and assessing those and extinguishing them, making for sure that the railroad tracks, Amtrak tracks don't get impacted by any heat, and there's no issues inside there. And then additionally, where there are contingency lines or what were primary lines, and what I mean by that is dozer lines or hand lines, stuff like that, that did not hold the fire during the initial attack or the significant runs it made while the Great Basin team was here. Those lines are being located, assessed, and suppression repair is taking place on those, where we're water barring those and making sure they don't create runoffs or slides or issues later on. So a lot of work is going on in the interior as well, and we're prioritizing that appropriately as we deal with our 3 problem areas on the exterior fire perimeter.
Excellent. And one more for you, John, from the Facebook crowd. How long does the slurry stay in effect? Seeing the fire from the air makes it seem like there's a lot of slurry out there, especially north of Glenwood on Iron Mountain.
Okay, there is a lot of retardant lines that are out on the fire. As you guys know, they had a VLAT in here. They had all kinds of large air tankers and air tankers in here doing the best they could to try and initial attack this under some pretty adverse conditions. So you're absolutely right. There's a lot out here. As far as the longevity of that, I'll let you know that my oldest daughter and I did a science experiment on this that we won first prize on for her junior high. But it lasts on the landscape for a fair amount of time. Weeks is a good, probably a good timeline to say weeks, and probably on the longer end, a month. It depends on how much moisture we get and rain we get. And that tends to wash it away, as you guys can imagine, just rinses the fuel off. Second to that, the effectiveness of it actually maintains for quite some time. We, in our science experiment that we did, we actually dipped hay bale loaves in retardant in multiple day increments, and the effectiveness, even on the ones that were 3 weeks old plus, It burned deeper into that hay bale loaf, but it still did actually extinguish or retard the fire, so it wouldn't progress any further. So it does maintain its effectiveness. If we get significant rain or one of these thunder cells passing over and we get a deluge that comes down, then that will weaken the effectiveness of it.
Okay, great. And we just had one in for you again, John. Should we be calling whenever we see smoke?
That's a good question. What I would tell the community is it's always good to err on the side of caution. We have folks here that are dedicated for initial attack response, for going out and validating the priority or the significance of what you're seeing. If you call it in, it might mean that we don't put it out, but we will definitely go and look at it if it makes sense for the area to consume, so we don't have an ongoing problem. We'll monitor that and ensure that it doesn't cause any adverse effects. But yeah, I would say go ahead and continue to call if you see stuff, and just be aware that we recognize that you're not firefighters out there, and you might call us to something that we don't attack or that isn't necessarily the highest priority, but we sure as heck appreciate everybody's participation in helping us take care of this catastrophe in your backyard.
And this just in, I always do this to you because the comments are coming in. The
all right,
Facebook crowd's
Cal,
very
expect
engaged,
nothing
and then IC is next. But low, medium, or high risk on that portion of November that you talked about in depth, threat to Glenwood Springs.
Okay, are we back on the map? Okay, so here's what I know. I know that we have a continuous mixed con stringer that comes up out of here and crosses around this H4 area right at Windy Point, and then also maintains basically a northwest direction and a little bit of a westerly direction. That's our highest priority right now. The probability of it coming out of here depends on Mother Nature. The intensity at which it comes out of here is based on duration of the weather that we're dealing with right now. If it stays hot, dry, and excessively hot and dry, then it's a higher probability. Would I be willing to put personnel in this area if I thought it was going to race out of there? No. And we're scouting this opportunity now and considering that plan. As far as potential for it to come out and hook around, my trainer used to answer tough questions like this by saying he liked our chances, okay? And I would say the same thing. I like our chances in this area. I like the opportunities and the feedback that I'm getting from the ground personnel. I feel very confident about these contingency lines up top, but our number one priority is to try and keep this fire as small as possible to reduce the amount of perimeter that could threaten the community later on. So I would say that we have a moderate risk potential, but we're looking a lot better than you guys were a week and a half ago because we have fewer priorities and we're able to concentrate our, most of our horsepower in a few very specific areas.
Okay, and now we have a quick follow-up to your science experiment on retardant.
All right.
Is it harmful to the live vegetation as far as long-term?
We don't want it to get in watersheds. We don't drop retardant in or near watersheds. That's where we've seen the highest risk to animals. It's not, I have not seen or heard of any serious adverse effects to animals walking through or being in areas that have been treated with retardant.
And then on the retardant point, one more, and then we'll go to Tom for the IC questions. How will the retardant continue to affect the No Name Creek water supply?
Okay, so to be clear, in all of my flights and all of my recons, I have not seen any retardant in the No Name Creek area, if that's what they're asking about. So I would say that since, to my knowledge, there isn't any in that area, I would say that you're looking pretty good in No Name.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. And we'll move over to Incident Commander Deputy Tom Kurth. And this is a great question. At what point will we transfer from a type 1 to a type 2, or I'll also embellish and say a smaller organization of incident management?
Okay, okay, let's talk complexity levels first. So there's 5 complexity levels, 1 being the most complex, 5 being initial attack and as small as 1/10 of an acre. And so depending on size and scope of the fire, that's how we classify each fire. So this fire being the most complex for various reasons, that is not just the operational hazards and risk involved to it, but the logistics and the infrastructure and the information and COVID-19 and all those issues that we have make it the most complex. And from what I understand, you shut that highway down for any amount of time, it's a severe impact economically, as DOT has told us. That's also where the railroad runs through there, so it has those issues here. In addition, we did a analysis in a 5-mile radius around this fire here, $2.5 billion in value for homes and infrastructure and buildings protected here. So this fire still remains a type 1 fire. Our first job is, as we get situated here, we're only into this a few days, is we'll do a strategic analysis where we take our operations people along with our other section chiefs, work with our Forest Service representatives and all our agency administrators, and we want to make sure we're on task with this strategy and make sure that we can complete realistic objectives there. So that's our next phase that we'll do. And then we want to be completing those objectives. At some point, we'll do a complexity analysis and we'll be ready to downsize in some form. Now, where does that go to? We might be able to complete objectives where we can go down to a type 3, a much smaller organization. However, most likely it goes down to a type 2 based on size and scope again, based on whatever objectives still remain here. And so that's all done in concert with the Forest Service and all their agency administrators. And we're running down this decision document, let's just say 2 weeks. I'm only saying that might occur in that time frame, and then we might be able to step it down a complexity level.
Great, and then because I know you're an avid biker, I'm gonna throw you the bike question. You have a great e-bike that I'm very jealous of and ride all on Fairbanks. When will the bike path be open?
Well, I'm gonna have to defer to Lisa for that, but for us on mountain bikes, they're open all the time, so. we're ready.
Outside of the closure area.
Outside the closure area,
Okay,
thank
great.
you, okay. Yeah, Lisa, anything on the bike path at all you wanna mention?
I'll let CDOT, you want to answer that?
Okay,
Okay, so again, we're gonna get our representative from CDOT, Don, to answer the, when will the bike path be open? Because of course it does parallel the highway for the audience that doesn't live here.
So as I mentioned earlier, the bike path is going to remain closed until it is deemed safe for the public to stop in the rest areas, go out on the bike path from those rest areas, or start here at Glenwood, ride all the way through the canyon without too big a risk of a storm event or a rockfall event causing some kind of closure of I-70 or the bike path that would lead us to a search and rescue event. Our main goal is to protect our customers, our citizens of the state of Colorado, and everybody else that uses this I-70 corridor through Glenwood Canyon. Like I said earlier, we have Team Alaska's meteorologist that's helping us with that. We also have our internal meteorologist. It's not an easy decision to keep it closed. I understand that we have a lot of people that want to use that bike path. It's great recreational area, but with the firefighters using our rest areas at 2 locations for spike camps, the bike path gives them access to that rest areas. We do not want that commingling because there's issues with that, and we've been asked not to have that. The other part of it is just the fact that if something does happen, we can clear Glenwood Canyon in a relatively fast time if we do not have people on the bike path or in those rest areas away from their vehicles. That's why we have signs out on the highway that say no stopping on the highway. That also helps with the likelihood of being hit by a rockfall event. You're less likely to get hit by one if you're not stopped under a rockfall area. So we do ask that everybody continue to stay in motion through there. And as soon as we determine that it's safe to do so, we will open the bike path and the rest areas up. But at this point, we cannot give a set date or time when that's going to happen.
Okay, great. We still have 254 audience members watching live, which is really impressive for an hour. And they now have a follow-up for you, Don.
Okay.
So what are CDOT's plans to monitor the canyon this winter when the ground freezes?
So, like I said, we have 2 meteorologists that work for CDOT. We will continue to work with them on a daily basis, have them provide us weather forecasts on a daily basis, also working with the Forest Service, the Bear team with the Forest Service, and that's how we figured out our trigger points for our flash flooding and how much precipitation is going to cause that flash flooding and debris flows. All we can do is go on by recommendations from the experts like the Bear team and the Forest Service, weather, the meteorologist, and we can only make good decisions based on that. I will say that we know that we're going to have events, weather events, that's going to cause some kind of impact to I-70. Whether it's a flash flood event or a debris flow event or a rockfall event. CDOT as an organization, we have ramped up our response to those events. We have brought in a lot of extra equipment to the Glenwood area and the .0 area so we can provide a relatively fast response to clear out the rocks or the mud or whatever it may be. We have a lot of other equipment such as trucks on standby. We have a lot of personnel on standby, and it's going to be pretty much a one-call stop, and everybody's notified and they know that they're coming to Glenwood Springs or they're coming to .0. We've already mapped out our dump locations where we're going with the material that we get that impacts the roadway.
Okay, great. One last follow-up for you, and then I'm going to Lisa, and then we're going to close it out. But the audience can leave questions, and we'll continue to answer them. We have a staff of about 15 information officers here who are working for you. So obviously the rockfalls are going to happen. Can you do rockfall mitigation before winter to help with this next spring?
So CDOT also has a geology team out of Denver. They have been here multiple times. They have been up on slope. They've looked at several areas. They haven't identified anything that is of huge concern to them, but they have identified areas that have possible issues with rain events, freeze-thaw cycles. They are in Denver. They are putting a plan together. I don't know what that plan is as of yet, but I'm sure they will be letting us know as soon as they have something in place.
Excellent, thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Okay, and for Lisa, we have just a few more. We do want to honor the request that folks have put out there for Colorado Parks and Wildlife to be here because we understand there's a lot of concern for the wildlife. I'm not going to press Lisa to answer more than she knows because there are questions for wildlife biologists. Let's start with, is there anything being done to kind of assess if the wildlife have been stressed? And would that lead to them being protected from hunters if that were the case? If they need to recuperate from the fire? I'm rewording the question for you to give you a chance because I know that that's not necessarily in your lane, but.
Right, I would say, yeah, that's not necessarily in our lane. It is more in Colorado Parks and Wildlife arena. I will tell you that, they're watching hunting season, we're watching hunting season approach, and we're meeting yet this week, I believe tomorrow, the Forest Service at a state level, BLM at a state level, and Colorado Parks and Wildlife, just to talk, because this is not the only large fire in Colorado, obviously. And so they need to think about tags, hunting tags and access and how all those things are going to play out over the next couple of months. So I'm sorry I don't have any more information than that to share, but I do know that they're talking about it right now.
And we've heard the call, so the information unit will take this on and try to
Okay.
get some answers for folks.
Okay.
What about access to Flat Top Mountain or Flat
The
Top,
flat
sorry?
tops, the flat tops.
Yep.
Right now, the closure area covers everything from the wilderness boundary on this side of the flat tops down towards the canyon, right? So that's all closed to public access right now. And for the foreseeable future, we're going to keep that closed, mostly because of access. That Coffee Pot Road is a tough spot on the best of days, even when you don't have firefighters and heavy equipment on it. But we are reassessing every day with the team where it's safe for people to go and if there are other ways that they might be able to access it. We don't have any changes to that at this time.
Okay, great, thank you. And for the 219 folks still remaining, and for those who are still watching on the replay, here's the last question of the night.
Okay.
Will the Alaska team be here for 2 weeks like the Great Basin team and then switch out, or are they here for longer?
That's yet to be determined. As Tom explained, we keep this level of team as long as we have the complexity to support that and they're able to stay and help us. Likely we won't keep them much longer than 14 days, and we'll see how the next week goes, and we'll start talking about whether it's a good time to transition to different leadership or keep them around a little bit longer. They've only been here
This is
2 or 3 days, so we still have a long way to go with them. And I'm confident they'll make great progress while they're here, and then we'll make a new decision in a couple of weeks.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. I feel the need to identify our disembodied voice here who's been offering the questions up. Cale Casey, he's my co-lead in the information shop. And as he said, we have a pretty robust staff here, and keep your questions coming in, and we will answer those. What we can't answer ourselves, we'll certainly seek out the people with the knowledge to answer those questions. So please keep those coming. Also, stay tuned on this Facebook channel because we will continue with our operational updates. It'll be Glover or our other operations chief, Karen Scholl. We'll continue with our live break it down segments where we'll introduce different aspects of fire workers, fire behavior, fire, whatever your questions are going to be. We're going to work real hard to answer your questions so that you know all you can about what's going on here in this it's a pretty spot. And we want to do all we can so that you guys can take care of this here. So I want to thank all of our presenters tonight. I certainly want to thank Garfield County for letting us use this very nice facility. I want to say that come Monday, that's the 31st, Monday at 6 p.m., we will be back over in Eagle for another virtual community meeting. Same format, we'll have presenters, it'll be on Facebook, we'll capture questions, answer the best we can. We're assessing the need. We had a lot of viewers tonight, so there's still a lot of interest. That's good. We want to answer your questions. We want you to come back and see what's up. So with that, thank you very much, and until our next segment here on Facebook. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Sam. And just for behind the scenes again, Mina and Wayne, who are information officers working the computer, will continue to answer questions from folks who post in the next hour or so. Thanks.